First, we're bringing in a boots on the ground perspective from Michigan to break down the state's cannabis tax increase, which actually, and Alex can correct me if I'm wrong, I believe just came to pass or in the early hours of this morning. Alex, welcome to the show. It's your first time. So, not only your first time on the show, but the first time we've ever connected. So, please introduce yourself before we get into the subject matter.
Yeah, thanks, Cole. I appreciate it. My name's Alex Eckman. I've been a part of the Michigan cannabis industry for nearly 10 years now. Started off as a Michigan patient and caregiver, and then quickly got into the industry as a bud tender, found myself working in extraction labs, and then the past 4 or 5 years spent up in Sault Ste. Marie, Michigan, up in the Upper Peninsula, pursuing a bachelor's degree in cannabis chemistry at Lake Superior State University. So I've got to see kind of a wide variety of the supply chain from various different aspects, and then also the academic side. And then certainly have been a part of various advocacy programs along the way, helped out in the early LARA work groups, which kind of established the Michigan laws. And you're correct. In the early hours, we did see Michigan pass a 24% excise tax on wholesale cannabis. And it's a really peculiar tax. It's kind of interesting how they worded it, where it's actually kind of an aggregate tax. So what they're doing is they're taking data from the basically CRA and internal tax services in Michigan, and they're using that number to find the average industry wholesale price, if I understand the bill correctly, and from what I've been hearing, and that's being levied on the industry operators. So it's really kind of interesting because I don't know of any industries that do something like this, where if you're a bargain brand, for instance, and you have a low wholesale price, your average tax price is going to account for those higher end brands in there too, because it's an aggregate of the whole industry for the quarter. So you're kind of getting a disproportionate tax levied on you if you're a budget or bargain brand compared to a upper end brand. I don't know how that's going to play out in the courts. I already know of a couple different lobbyist groups that are really trying to find ways around this. One of them leading the charge is the MICIA, and we're still kind of waiting to hear on responses from them, what the next best steps forward are. But I do know there's a lot of legal experts in Michigan really putting their brain power together on how to fight back against this.
Gotcha. And yeah, so I want to talk about that. I want to get back to that fight against it in just a moment, but just for listeners in Illinois, for example, we've got a lot of listeners out of the Illinois cannabis market who make the trek to the Mecca, or Michigan, as we also call it, for access to a wide range of affordable, high quality products at a fair price, which is something you don't see really in the Illinois market. My question is, and I think it's the question of a lot of people tuning in, are we going to see some sticker shock?
I would assume so. A lot of brands in Michigan, they've been saying it for a while now that it's hard to compete. You're having margin compressions when it comes to your profitability year over year. And I would almost guarantee that you're going to see this reflect in the consumer end and on the consumer price, because if they're already struggling to make ends meet as it is, and you're going to slap an extra 24% reduction in their profit margins, that has to come from somewhere. And the operators and retailers certainly are not going to be able to absorb it. At least a vast majority from what we're hearing in the market aren't. So we're even hearing words that this is going to put some out of business. Now, I don't necessarily believe it's that bad, and that's the case, because you can just kind of push this tax onto the consumers. But yeah, I think it'd be safe to say that you will see a effectively 24 to 25% increase on your end ticket item when this does go into effect.
Gotcha. Yeah, and that was the other side of the question that I was going to ask. There's many consumers that have been talking about the concerns about sticker shock. I've seen one operator at least say that the prices are still going to be, yes, they're going to be more expensive, but they're still going to be cheaper than Illinois and Ohio, for example. But to the other part of your answer, and that's I was going to segue to that is I've been hearing sort of that, yeah, it's going to be that the prices are passed down, that they mostly and primarily, I maybe would say, affect the operators, but then they'll be passed down. So I guess the reason I bring that up and the reason I was going to ask about that is because it seemed like there were concerns that really who this would harm is, again, residually the consumer because of increased prices, but primarily mom and pop shops. Have you been hearing the same with regard to that?
Yeah, I've been hearing a lot of sentiment, especially the smaller companies saying that they're already having a hard time competing. And I kind of have a little contrarian view on there. And that's really pushing against the general notion of this perpetual race to the bottom that Michigan's been experiencing. My viewpoint on it is that we certainly had that for the first couple of years, but lost leaders couldn't lead forever. And now a lot of the continuing of driving price down is actually just unlocks in technology, efficiency gains, SOP changes. For example, not having to be able to put 3 labels on now, you can have a machine put 1 on it for you. So it lowers your production price in that function. And I think that smaller operators are actually now more, or I should say, better positioned to really adopt some of that because they don't have to buy maybe as many inner canopy lights to increase their efficiency. So what I'm getting at is these smaller operators can pivot faster than big players that have to deploy this on the like massive scale. And those are the ones that should be the most primed to really take advantage of this because they really can adapt quick, they can adopt quick, and they can start finding ways to really incrementally put themselves above their competition just through efficiency gains and technology implementation. So I think Michigan still is a profitable market. In fact, around this time last year, I worked on a 60-page long analysis of every single cost involved in cultivation. We showed that you could produce indoor quality flower at about $400 per pound. So the average, you know, price per pound wholesale right now is right around 600 to 700 a pound indoor. There's still plenty of money to be made there at the end of the day. So it's still profitable. It's just you have to be smarter now. It's harder to make money. And I think that smaller mom and pop operators, if they just embrace a lot of the technology that we're seeing on the market that really reduces that production price, they can actually find avenues to win. Whereas the larger operators, they're going to have a harder time steering that ship in a different direction.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Well, to shift gears slightly, it's still on this topic, but I'll display some images that we saw out of Michigan's rotunda. If people are listening, the rotunda is completely packed. People are cheering, and they're all part of this cannabis protest, if you will, protesting the increase in taxes. I also saw you were on the ground. I'll put some of your posts up really quick. I like this. Sign here, relax on the tax. There's also don't kill the golden goose. What was your general takeaway from this rally slash protest at the Capitol in Michigan? Any thoughts you wanted to share?
It was nice to see the Michigan community really come out and show the support for the industry. A lot of it obviously was operators or employees in the industry really vocalizing their concern, but you could see the passion, and I don't think you see that in a lot of other states. So, for instance, I actually had someone on Instagram message me about that, saying that they wish in Ohio that they would get that type of support for rallying against some of their laws. So I really thought it was beautiful to see the community come together and put on this show of solidarity and support. And it could be something that other states can use as an example of, sure, we didn't get the end outcome that we wanted to, but we definitely made our voice known. And 1,000 people yelling is way louder than 10,000 silent people. So even though it wasn't like a gigantic, massive turnout. We still pulled in a couple hundred people, and they were there for multiple days. I mean,
Yeah.
uh, you really saw some diehards show their love for the industry. And as someone that was there from the beginning and really watched this industry build up in Michigan, that just meant a lot to me. So I really like that, and really appreciate seeing that, not just as a consumer, but as also an operator in the industry.
Do you have any pointers for Illinoisans? Because I'm going to display this on screen again. Like you said, only 100 people. We wouldn't. I'd love to see only 100 people show up in Illinois. I'd love to see a scene like this in Illinois. Is there anything you can impart, for us in Illinois that like might make it so that we could have a turnout like this? Like, is it just, do you guys have a good Discord chat or something? Like, I don't know. How do you
Well,
guys mobilize like that?
a lot of that came just through organic social media posts. I want to
Okay.
say that MICAA, which is one of our kind of leading lobbyist groups, they kind of took the charge on it. But there was also very outspoken leaders in this industry um, that took the charge on themselves. A couple of them being like Ghostbusters Farms. I know that they were putting up like actual billboards a couple days before, trying to gather support for this. Nathan Russell from Road Trip Pre-Rolls, he's very outspoken on LinkedIn, but he also did a ton of just social media stories, Instagram posts. And I know we also have a small Facebook group, MI Canna Pros. It's got probably, I don't know, 20, 30,000 people in it. So I wouldn't say it's necessarily small, but through those various social media channels, we were really able to make this a grassroots thing. And it just started with someone's idea. Like I said, I want to say it was Robin Schneider with the MICIA of let's rally at the Capitol. And from there, it just spread completely organically.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So, I'm going to give you space to say anything that maybe we haven't covered yet in a moment. But one thing you brought up that I said I wanted to circle back to was legal challenges, sort of moving forward. I wanted to kind of get your take on what you think this looks like. I had one of my buddies and I we're from Illinois. We're big fans of Michigan. He is saying he believes any changes to the cannabis market has to have 2/3 of both houses of the legislature to pass. Since this was a ballot initiative, I'm guessing that might be the framework of a legal challenge. But just generally speaking, like, what are you hearing with regard to the pathways they may take to challenge this?
So a couple different things on that. One, I should say I'm an organic chemist by trade, definitely not a lawyer
Sure.
expert or law expert. But with that being said, I've seen worse in the Michigan industry, right? When we first started, we had the LARA board, which was ran by very corrupt individuals accepting pay to play bribes, and much worse. And so those individuals saw prison time from that. So we saw corrupt government before. We've had three different regulatory bodies overseeing the Michigan market from the LARA days, the MRA, and now the CRA. So we've dealt with regulatory change and we've dealt with stuff worse than this. Michigan will survive. We'll get past this. We've got a lot of very smart and passionate people on the legal side. Right now, I think a lot of people are just kind of keeping their lips kind of closed until they get better advisement from their lawyers on how to go about this. Again, it did just pass in the morning. So although we had a couple weeks of kind of uh, strategizing, it didn't become official till today. So I think we'll
Right.
find out in the next coming weeks what the next best steps are. I don't know if that's through a class action type lawsuit, challenging the actual legality of this tax, or if it's something like, I know there's already a grassroots effort brewing for people just to switch to the medical side because this is only a wholesale tax on recreational cannabis. So if we were just to embrace the Michigan model of medical, where we started from, we could go back to that and effectively force the government's hand by just everyone getting a med card and flipping to that. Now, is that an effective solution? I don't think so. You're not going to have everyone in Michigan go and immediately get a med card and switch back to that model. But I mean, it's ideas that we're seeing brewing. And honestly, I don't know the best way forward. I assume it'll probably be through challenging it at the state court level. But we'll see over the next couple weeks and months as it progresses. And again, I don't think it's going to be the end of the Michigan cannabis industry. If anything, it's going to get passed down to the consumers, but we already have some of the lowest retail prices in the nation. So as much as I'm a consumer at the end of the day as well, I don't want to see prices go up. Um, they've been much higher in the past. So I like to try and keep an optimistic view on it. But yeah, that's really kind of what I've been hearing is potential lawsuit, potential switch to medical. People propose maybe having it of 1 penny per pound, but then you're paying for a $500 t-shirt with every order. So like there's weird loopholes, and Michigan's had a lot of gray areas that have been able to been exploited in the past. We'll certainly find a way to do it on this.
Yeah. Well, Alex, I want to give you space for anything else you might want to mention. I did have one other question for you just about how you think Michigan and the Illinois cannabis market compares, but we'll get to that. I wanted to give you space. Anything that you just specifically wanted to mention today or cover that we haven't already covered?
No, I think we've really gone over the big elephant in the room, being the Michigan tax. And certainly, I think there's a lot of interesting differences and similarities between the Michigan and Illinois market. We can definitely dig into that because you have two completely different structures here, one being a limited license and one being practically completely open. And I think you really do see the end effects of what this kind of, we'll call it government intervention, can have on a market and the products that it creates. You look at Michigan, where initially it was kind of hands off. You follow your checks and pay your fees, you get your license, and you saw a true competitive environment emerge where people were competing on price. And then when that got too hard, you had to compete on quality, and now you're having to compete on brand image and brand name. Whereas in Illinois, or even we can lump in Ohio, because that's another limited license state too, and just call the whole Midwest, you have much higher prices in those limited license areas, like Illinois, comparatively speaking to Michigan, simply because that competition's not out there. There's no driving force for these brands to really innovate or compete on price quality. You almost get this comfort satisfaction factor. And so myself, I think part of it is that I'm just a hyper capitalist at heart, and just really love free market enterprise, but you really see the difference there. And when Michigan starts doing more of these government interventions or putting their hands in it with a tax, I think it'll be an interesting case analysis to see how it plays out. Because now we're normalizing our price per pound back up closer to your guys's. It'll be interesting to see how border shops are affected by this with the interstate commerce, even though technically that's not necessarily supposed to be allowed. Again, Michigan likes to exploit gray areas where technically the law kind of allows it. And that's just with the state reciprocity when it comes to like medical cards, or obviously on the rec market, just 21 plus. But I think there's a lot of other things that we could focus on too in Michigan when it comes to just uh, bigger picture or worse things going on in the market than just this 24% tax. I mean, there's metric loopholes going on like crazy. We just had a company get their license stripped that was bringing in thousands of pounds from the black market. I think it was like Cherry LLC or something that they called it. But yeah, I mean, you got all these backdoors being exploited in metric. You've got conversion oils entering the market, from CBD hemp to THC conversions that are dropping price per pound. So there's a lot of interesting dynamics when we look at what's going on in Michigan beyond just this 24% tax, that I think the government could focus on fixing. And instead they're just slapping blanket taxes on it to try and make it easy. But yeah, that's really kind of my 2 cents on the differences between Michigan and Illinois. Is you really see a lot more innovation happening in Michigan, whether it's on the product side, or just fighting for price point, market share, and then how they do it is really interesting. But I feel like you don't get that in some of these limited license states like Illinois. I'm curious, is that something that you've also kind of noticed?
Yeah, yeah, no, I think you hit it on the head, and I think it permeates itself, or maybe this is like a chicken or the egg thing. Maybe I was gonna say that Michigan's cannabis culture, just in general, like setting aside the industry, like the fact that you can grow your own, whether or not you have a med card, because in Illinois you have to have a med card, and it's a really limited amount, and it's really strict. And so Michigan's cannabis culture just seems so much better, between hash bash and
Yeah.
everything that goes
Well,
on there. Um,
it's interesting that you mentioned the grow your own too, because although that we have that, I don't actually see many people really leveraging that. So I don't know if it's a time investment, cost investment, or what, but really it's a lot less than you would think that are actually growing at home, which is
sure.
in and of itself an interesting case study for these states that don't allow home grow. It's like if you have a state like Michigan that's allowing 12 plants and pretty loose laws behind that, being just don't let it be seen from public and don't let kids in the grow, pretty much have a secure entry place. Why don't you see a more proliferation of grows in Michigan, or why isn't the black market booming? And so maybe you could use that as a case analysis to present to lawmakers and say, hey, this isn't the threat that you think it is.
Mm,
Um,
yeah.
and we're kind of even seeing that in Michigan. Like the CRA is talking about repealing one of the little rules that we have as processors in Michigan, where you have to everything that you throw out, like your biomass waste, has to get mixed with kitty litter or dirt before it gets thrown in the
Right.
trash, because they're worried about people stealing trash cans and dumpsters worth of bunk, trash biomass, and that was never an issue to begin with. So they're even walking back some of these hurdles off of perceived threats that never were,
Yeah.
to come to fruition in the end.
Do you prefer a market over the other, like a Illinois versus Michigan, just to give you a binary?
Yeah, I think I like the Michigan market, and that's not just me being biased from Michigan. It's the fact that, granted, it's pretty much impossible for anyone to get access to capital nowadays. But if you did have that line of capital, you could start a cannabis company in Michigan, and you could have your attempt at that dream of having your own company. And which, as a caregiver and patient myself, was always one of my goals and still is to this day. So in Michigan, with how easy it is to enter the market, if you just have a little bit of bucks to build your company up, you have that shot. And I think on the flip side, when it comes to working in this industry, which is something that I see myself for the rest of my life working in cannabis in some shape or form, just the amount of jobs, while I still wish there was more jobs in Michigan, there's much more than other states, is what I'm finding. Especially as I just embarked on a job hunt post graduation. So that was back in May, and exploring just all the other states out there. Really, Michigan had one of the more appealing frameworks, just from the simplicity of the laws that are in place and how the market's really structured.
Yeah. Yeah, I can't find the clip right now, but there's a really good clip out of Oregon, because even like our state regulators will point to states like Oregon or Michigan. I've heard them specifically point to Michigan and say, this state's a failure. These states are failures because of their specifically because of their open license model, and prices get so low
I
that
like
people
that you
can't
bring
make.
that up.
Yeah,
Let's
go
also
ahead.
remind them that in any other business, let's take the restaurant or fast food or food industry, 9 out of 10 businesses fail within their first 5 years, anyways. Business is incredibly freaking hard at the end of the day, whether you're in cannabis, tobacco, alcohol, or selling, just stuff on like a lemonade stand. So business is incredibly hard. We can't just cater to this mindset of everyone should exist in cannabis. I know that's harsh. That may be a little bit of my inner like capitalist maxi speaking here, but at the end of the day, I mean, it's business, and really, I don't think the failure rate in cannabis is any higher than any other industry. And all you're doing by doing limited license is creating oligarchies at the end of the day. And so we don't see that in many other industries. So why should we be pushing that in this new emerging industry that is cannabis? And certainly could be much more than just cannabis when you look at the hemp and textiles, polymer, biofuel side of things. Um, this industry as a whole has the ability to be much bigger than it already is. Why put artificial constraints and caps on that? And yeah, people are going to go out of business, but that's any business or any industry.
Well said. Yeah, and like I said, the head regulator, then head regulator for Oregon, Steve Marks, he actually came on my show back in the day. I'll have to link that in the show notes because I asked him about this. But he was asked on Vice, would you do it again? Would you do open licensing again? And he said, well, first of all, I'm the regulator, so I kind of just enforce the law. It's not really my opinion. But if you're asking me my opinion, yes, I would do it again because at least everybody knew what they were signing up for and had a chance to compete versus in these other states like Illinois. Like I couldn't today or tomorrow. I always like to use this example. Like if you want to start a cannabis business in Illinois tomorrow, it's impossible unless you like know somebody that already has a license. You'd have to acquire it off of them. The point is, you can't just go and like with a restaurant, go through and just apply for the licensing. Get a food license from the health department. Get your local zoning and approval. Like you just simply can't because the state has capped the issuance of licenses.
Yeah. And let's not also forget, like Michigan, although at the state level is technically unlimited, in reality, it's not because it's
Right.
set by the municipalities. So the municipalities, just like a local liquor board can say how many alcohol license they issue, my
Yep.
local municipality, while they have the option to allow unlimited licenses, and many do, you also see quite a few municipalities limit maybe one or two grows or one or two processing labs. So it isn't necessarily as open as maybe it's initially perceived. Now, granted, it's much better than many other states, but we still don't have all of our municipalities online. There's still large dead spots where full counties don't have access to cannabis in Michigan. And so that's actually the case of where I'm at right now in Livingston County. I have to drive to Ann Arbor, Jackson, or Flint, which is 15, 20 minutes in either direction at minimum to get a retailer. So even what we're 7, 8 years past recreational now in Michigan, and you still don't have full access. So we still got ways to go, but
Yeah.
I certainly agree. I think the open model is the way to go. We don't allow oligarchies or monopolies in many other industries. So why should we allow that in cannabis is kind of my thoughts.
Well said. Well said. And yeah, to briefly extend your point, I've gone to places in Illinois, townships in Illinois, where they said, we've limited the number of bars or we've limited the number of smoke shops. And like you say, I'm all for a locality, a township, whatever, whatever, a village. I'm all for them setting their own limits, what they want in their own communities. I think that's acceptable. But to have the state sort of
Mm.
dictate across the board, and it sounds like you're in agreement, that's where it gets to be something that I start to disagree with. But like you say, I'm all for like these localities saying, we only want a few pot shops in town or something like that. Go for it, just like you do with other things. So
Yeah, certainly. I mean, if you don't want access to that tax revenue, by all means. That's kind of
right.
the way that I go about it.
Right. Well, I'm about to segue over to a segment with my friend Phil, where we continue our discussion on Michigan versus Illinois. But we went anywhere and everywhere today. Alex, before we close out, just wanted to give you one last space. Anything else you wanted to say before you go?
No, I really appreciate the opportunity and just want to say, Michigan, we've been around for a while and we'll still be here. We'll get past this 24% increase. Just give us a couple months to figure something out. But I really appreciate the opportunity and thank you so much, Cole.
Yeah, absolutely. Alex, thank you for coming on. People, if you're listening to this right now and you're enjoying the show, please hit the like button and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already.